April 6, 1966, Westall High School, Clayton South, Melbourne, Australia, 11 a.m. 200 students and several teachers are outside during a recess break. It is a clear autumn morning. Someone looks up. A silver-gray disc, approximately twice the size of a family car, descending slowly toward a field beyond the school fence. It crosses directly over the school, close enough that students describe being able to see its shape clearly. No wings, no exhaust, no sound. A structured craft, in broad daylight, witnessed by 200 people simultaneously. 5 light aircraft appear, apparently attempting to intercept it. The disc outmaneuvers all of them. It lands, briefly, in a paddock beyond the school grounds. Students run toward it, and then it rises and disappears. When investigators arrived at the paddock, they found a circle in the grass, a landing mark where the craft had been. The grass pressed flat, in a pattern that could not be explained by wind or weather. Within hours, men arrived at the school, not teachers, not parents, men in suits, who told the students and staff that what they had seen was a weather balloon and that they were not to discuss it further. 200 witnesses, a physical landing mark, 5 pursuit aircraft, and a government silencing. This is the Westall incident, Australia's most significant UFO case, and almost nobody outside Australia has ever heard of it. Section 2. The School. April 6, 1966. Westall High School, Clayton South, Melbourne. Westall High School in 1966 was an ordinary suburban secondary school. Clayton South was a working-class neighborhood on the southeastern outskirts of Melbourne. Not a military area, not a government facility, not anywhere unusual. Just a school with students on a Wednesday morning. The time was approximately 11 a.m. Students were outside for a mid-morning break. It was a clear day, good visibility, no atmospheric conditions that would explain what happened next. A student named Terry Peck was the first to notice something unusual. He saw a disc-shaped object in the sky, silver-gray in color, moving south. He called out to the students around him. People looked up. The object crossed over the school. Multiple witnesses described it as approximately the size of 2 family cars, roughly the size of a small aircraft fuselage, but with no wings, no tail, no visible means of propulsion. A disc, smooth, metallic-looking, moving silently, at a height that multiple witnesses estimated between 100 and 300 feet, close enough to clearly see its shape. The witnesses. Among the witnesses that morning were Andrew Greenwood, a science teacher, a man trained in observation and skeptical thinking. He watched the object from the school grounds and later gave multiple detailed accounts of what he saw. Joy Clark, a student who was among those who ran toward the landing site. She described watching the object descend and land. She described the sensation of being drawn toward it, as if compelled to approach. Multiple students from different classes, outside in different parts of the school grounds, all describing the same object, the same direction, the same behavior. What is significant about the Westall witness pool is its size and its independence. 200 people are a lot of witnesses, but more importantly, they were not together. They were in different locations around the school grounds, and their accounts were consistent. When 200 people in multiple different locations independently describe the same object in the same location behaving in the same way, that is not mass hysteria. That is observation. Section 3. The Landing. The object lands. As students watched, the object moved beyond the school fence toward a nearby paddock, an open, grassy area known locally as the Grange. Multiple students ran toward the fence to get a better look. A group of students, led by a girl named Jacqueline Argent, actually crossed the fence and approached the landing site. Jacqueline later described getting close enough to see the craft clearly. She described a gray saucer shape, sitting in the grass. She said she felt dizzy as she approached, a strange sensation she could not explain. And then the craft rose, silently, rapidly, and was gone. The pursuit aircraft are one of the most extraordinary elements of the Westall case. Multiple witnesses, students and teachers, described seeing between 3 and 5 small aircraft arriving in the area while the disk was still visible. The aircraft appeared to be attempting to intercept or circle the object. The disk outmaneuvered all of them with apparent ease, moving in ways that the light aircraft clearly could not match. The question of where those aircraft came from has never been satisfactorily answered. The Australian government denied scrambling any aircraft. The RAAF, the Royal Australian Air Force, said they had no aircraft in the area. But 200 witnesses watched those planes arrive, and the planes did not explain the disk. They chased it. The landing mark. When the object had gone and teachers had regained some control of the situation, investigators and students went to the paddock where the object had landed. What they found was a circle in the grass. Approximately 10 to 15 feet in diameter, the grass pressed flat, swirled in a pattern, dead and flattened in a way that was inconsistent with any weather phenomenon, inconsistent with anything that could have happened naturally in that location on that morning. The landing mark was photographed by at least one witness before it was disturbed. Those photographs exist. The mark was consistent with what multiple witnesses had described: a circular craft sitting in the grass, a physical trace. At the location where witnesses said a craft had landed, consistent with the witness accounts. That is not something that can be explained by mass hysteria. Section 4. The silencing. Within hours of the incident, men arrived at Westall High School. The accounts of who these men were vary. Some witnesses describe them as men in suits, government officials or intelligence personnel. Others describe uniformed military personnel. What is consistent across multiple accounts is what they said. The students and staff were told that what they had seen was a weather balloon. They were told that they should not discuss the incident. They were told, in some accounts, that if they continued to discuss it, there would be consequences. At least one teacher, Andrew Greenwood, described being specifically targeted for pressure. He had been one of the most credible witnesses. An adult, a science teacher, someone who could not easily be dismissed. He described being told in no uncertain terms to keep quiet. The school's headmaster held an assembly. Students were told the incident was over and not to be discussed. The message was clear. Whatever happened that morning, it was not to be talked about. For many of the witnesses, young people in 1966, in an era when authority figures were not questioned the way they might be today, this worked. They stayed quiet. For years. Some for decades. The fear of consequences, or simply the weight of being told by adults that what they had seen was nothing, silenced many of them. But not all. The witnesses who spoke. Jacqueline Argent gave interviews about what she saw. Andrew Greenwood, the science teacher, gave accounts to researchers over the years. Terry Peck, who had first noticed the object, eventually spoke publicly. And in 2010, a documentary called Westall 66, a suburban UFO mystery, brought many of the surviving witnesses together for the first time in decades. What was striking about that documentary was the consistency of the accounts. People who had not compared notes in 44 years described the same object, the same behavior, the same pursuit aircraft, the same landing. 44 years of silence, and the story had not changed. Section 5. The official response. The Australian government's official position on the Westall incident has been consistent. They have said very little. There is no official government investigation report that has ever been released about the Westall incident. The RAAF, which maintained official UFO records under Project Hybel and other programs, has no public record acknowledging Westall. The official position is essentially, it did not happen, or if it did, it was a weather balloon, and there is nothing further to discuss. But researchers who have dug into the archival record have found something interesting. The absence of documentation is itself unusual. A mass sighting by 200 people at a school in a Melbourne suburb involving pursuit aircraft and a physical landing mark is not the kind of event that generates no paperwork at all, unless someone decided there should be no paperwork. Researcher Keith Basterfield spent years attempting to locate any official documentation of the Westall incident. He found almost nothing. In a country that maintained active UFO records during the 1960s, Westall generated no official trace. The paperwork that should exist does not exist. The absence of a record is not proof of a cover-up, but it is unusual, and it is consistent with what the witnesses described. Men arriving at the school and telling people not to talk. Section 6. Honest Debunking. Because this is Vantage Elite, we go through what the skeptics say, honestly. The weather balloon explanation. The official explanation was a weather balloon. Weather balloons were common in 1966. The Bureau of Meteorology released them regularly. They can appear disc-shaped from certain angles when lit by sunlight. This is a legitimate starting point. It is what every 1960s UFO case gets explained as first. The mass hysteria explanation. Skeptics argue that school children, particularly in a group, are susceptible to suggestion and panic. One student sees something, calls out, others look, the excitement spreads, and in the confusion, what was something ordinary becomes something extraordinary. This is also a legitimate observation. Group dynamics can distort perception, what the skeptical explanations cannot account for. A weather balloon does not descend to within 100 to 300 feet of a school in a controlled manner and then ascend rapidly. Weather balloons drift. They do not descend toward a specific location. A weather balloon does not prompt 5 aircraft to arrive and attempt to circle it. A weather balloon does not leave a circular landing mark in the grass at a specific location consistent with witness accounts of where it touched down. Mass hysteria does not produce consistent independent accounts from 200 people in different locations across a school grounds, including a science teacher with no obvious motive for fabrication. Mass hysteria does not produce a physical landing mark, and mass hysteria does not cause men in suits to arrive at a school and tell students not to discuss what they saw. The weather balloon and mass hysteria explanations are the kind of explanations that sound plausible until you apply them to the specific evidence in this case. Then they stop making sense. Section 7. Ending. The students of Westall High School in 1966 are in their 70s now. They were teenagers, 15, 16, 17 years old, on a Wednesday morning in autumn. They saw something that should not exist according to the official record, and they were told by the adults whose job it was to guide them to forget it. Some of them did. Some carried it quietly for decades. Some spent years wondering if what they remembered was real. The 2010 documentary brought many of them back together. Watching those interviews, elderly Australians describing a morning 60 years ago, what strikes you is not the drama. It is the ordinariness of it. These are not people who built careers on UFO claims. These are teachers and factory workers and retirees. People who saw something on their way to class one morning and never fully forgot it. The science teacher Andrew Greenwood, the adult witness whose credibility was hardest to dismiss, died having never received any official acknowledgement of what he saw. The government never said, yes, something unusual happened at Westall on April 6, 1966. They never said, We investigated it and found no explanation. They said, weather balloon, and then they stopped talking about it. Here's what the Westall incident gives you that most UFO cases do not. It gives you scale and daylight. 200 witnesses, broad daylight, a clear morning. No ambiguity about whether people were seeing something real. They were all looking at the same thing from multiple locations simultaneously. It gives you a physical trace, a landing mark. And it gives you a government response that, whatever you think of UFOs, should make you ask questions. On April 6, 1966, at a school in suburban Melbourne, something landed in a paddock beyond the fence. 200 people saw it. 5 aircraft chased it. It left a mark in the grass, and then men arrived and told the witnesses to be quiet. For 60 years, most of the world has not heard this story. That seems like exactly the kind of story that deserves to be told. Subscribe to Vantage Elite for cases like this, documented, verified, done properly. Drop a comment, 200 witnesses, a landing mark, and a government silencing. What do you think landed in that paddock? And I will see you in the next one.